Talking Perspectives. Hi Vedang, thank you for coming again.
Oh,
So we
it's my
already
pleasure.
we have already done one session. So last time we talked more about you.
Hmm.
So we talked about a bit on your background, your experience at school. It was quite interesting. So we talked about his school Gyan Prabodhini in Pune
Hmm.
and his daily life and schedule there. The culture they have in the school, which they try to inculcate in their students, is quite interesting to know. Also, then we talked further about your education in biotechnology, general education in biotechnology, and your experience at Pune University, Savitribai Phule College. And also we discussed on national examinations related to life sciences and biotechnology, your experience with GATE and NET, and some tips which you gave for fellow younger students.
Okay.
Probably it will be quite helpful for them
Hmm.
to have a mindset before they get into the exam preparation and exam.
Yeah.
So that was all I think about you, and we talked a bit on books. You were asking me about some recommendations. I gave
Yeah.
a few names out. That's all. So we'll talk more about big books this time. I think we should spend some more time on that.
Definitely.
A very less talked about topic. And I think that was all.
Hmm.
So this time let's continue from where we stopped.
Hmm.
We'll spend some more time discuss about some things related to you and some general topics.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so
So I would like to say that thank you so
Yeah.
much for inviting me once again, because it's really like my pleasure. It's like I feel like I'm privileged of even like getting 2 hours of screen time instead of just one. So I think that's something which is really special for
it's
me. Thank you so much. Yeah.
it's it goes both ways, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. So I think last time also I mentioned that the unique or standout thing about you is that you can consume a lot of content. You have a lot of knowledge on vast areas, I feel, which is not so common, I guess. At least, especially in IISC, people tend to be a bit more focused on certain things only, but you have a lot of knowledge on lots of things. So
Okay.
if you can talk a bit about the kind of content you like to consume or have been consuming, and if you feel like you can also on the way give some recommendations which
Yeah.
can
Sure.
help me and also others who are listening to this podcast.
Yeah. Sure, definitely.
Maybe you can just start with the most best content sources, as well as maybe if you want to give out some names. Then
Yeah. So, I'm not like someone who's like an expert in everything, but I would just try to share what I have watched so far, what I have consumed, read, heard to, or
Okay.
in some cases even um, like I've seriously experienced a lot of content in general. So, I think with everyone. Not everyone, but like we start up in India at least, we have a huge exposure to Bollywood and stuff. So that sort of got me into like this consuming different kinds of content. I used to watch like a lot of Bollywood movies before. I still
Oh,
watch a
okay.
few of them,
Yeah.
but that sort of got me into that habit of like watching movies or consuming content, I would say. And it started with mostly fiction stuff, like all the major fiction, like all of the popular shows abroad as well as in India. I used to watch them. You can like even in India we had like all of those sitcoms and stuff. So this is like sort of was my initial exposure to
Entertainment related stuff,
Yeah.
which is common for
Yeah,
people.
I'm sure even you
Uh-huh.
must have your favorites
Some,
on Doordarshan or
yeah,
like
yeah,
on from
definitely. Yeah.
other, and even that sort of also got me introduced into the animated stuff which we watch. Like
Okay.
Tom and Jerry. We have Tom and Jerry. Then we have other kinds of. We also have Japanese cartoons, like which most people are like.
Animes.
There's like anime. There's like Doraemon. There's like
Hmm.
all of these
Yeah,
like children targeted anime we used to have
Hmm.
like on our TV channels growing up.
Hmm.
Later on, as I grew up in my high school and stuff, during my high school, my parents sort of cut off the cable, which is like the case with many Indian
It's
parents.
common,
like,
and it's sometimes called for also.
exactly,
But, yeah,
exactly.
It's common.
Because the students like their children are seriously spending like hours in front of the TV. So it's obvious for them to realize the problem and just address it by cutting
Yeah.
off the cable. It
Hmm.
starts out as a threat, and someday it just becomes your reality. You have to
Yeah,
accept it. You
yeah.
have to
You
find
have
new
to know
ways to
that,
cope up. Yeah.
It's good.
I think that was the very beginning. So I remember before the cable got cut off, I got hooked up to a lot of Nat Geo series. I got hooked up to a lot of Discovery and History TV. Oh my
History
God.
TV, yeah.
History
some
TV was
different
like
kinds of
I mean the
programs.
shows on History TV, say it Ancient Aliens or
Yeah.
there were like very weird kind of concepts. Pawn Stars.
There used to be one on factories.
Yeah.
They used to show how a product was made from scratch to the final
How it's
thing.
made in mega factories. Yeah.
Mega factories.
So
yeah.
Nat Geo used to have this show called Mega Factories where they used to show like anything. I think they have also showed how Amul makes his products. Or in India, how TVS makes it. Like, they had two different seasons. In the previous season, they covered a lot of American and European products. But later on, they sort of focused India and India specific products. So that was a thing. That was a pretty huge hit. Then I remember watching a lot of Cosmos. So Cosmos is a very popular series. It was like a hit series.
TV show?
It's a TV show. So
Okay.
it covers like an entire history of our universe. They go
Oh,
back
okay.
to like
Science.
the Big Bang. They go back to they use the most advanced technology to sort of simulate what might have been there.
Okay.
And
like a science document.
exactly, it's a sci-fi docu-series.
Okay.
So it was earlier started in 1980s. There were like a couple of seasons, at least 10-20 episodes, and those were hosted by Carl Sagan or Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
So
Science.
Carl Sagan was like a pretty popular scientist. He's a physicist, and he used to like anchor and narrate all of these stories, and it was like very fascinating because he himself was a poet. So
Oh, is it?
his analysis, his interpretation of the universe was of a poet.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
So you must have heard of the Pale Blue Dot. It's a poem. It's actually is what he narrates at the beginning of an episode, where like he it tries to symbolize our insignificance in the big wide world because it was the pale blue dot starts with an image of how Earth looks at the edge of this solar system, which is like so in the solar system we don't have just the sun and the planets, right? Even beyond the planets, there is this thing called Kuiper belt.
Yeah.
So Kuiper belt is where most of our asteroids, comets, all of those originate from. And just at the edge of the planets, like the main major planets and the exoplanets or other dwarf planets, there is a small patch from which Voyager took a photo of the universe, took a photo of the Earth. So in that photo you can see like the asteroid belt, you can see all of the other things, but you can identify a very pale blue dot,
I see.
and that's Earth.
I see. Okay.
That's when you realize the magnitude of the universe,
Yeah.
like how small we are. We might think that we are living like a very huge, very wonderful life. We have very enriching, but even that is nothing compared to the vastness of the world. And that's something the poem highlighted. That's something which, like the Carl Sagan was like a very huge pioneer in communication, especially in the television, because earlier people used to have magazines. He sort of pioneered a lot of that, as well as there's this old show called The Twilight Show, The Twilight Hour. It's like a very old BBC show. Not BBC, but like American show. But Carl Sagan was a really influential guy, especially for all of the current sci-fi podcasters and show. Even most of the, like, if you go to YouTube, there's VSauce, there are other, there's the physics guy, there's Veritasium, physics girl, there's a physics girl, there's also Veritasium, there's several other channels, right? So almost all of them have mentioned Carl Sagan at least once, because that's the kind of influence he had. Eventually that show was taken over by a new revamped show which was hosted by Neil deGrasse Tyson. So again, he's a very influential physicist. His protege, yeah. And there was that, and there was also Michio Kaku who took over other shows.
He's also, Japanese physicist.
Yeah, he's a American.
I read a book of
He's in Hawaii.
Yeah,
show. So that's what he used to host. Future with Michio Kaku. Then there's also Stephen Hawking, who used to host this show called Through the Wormhole with Stephen Hawking. So he used to, like, even it was his interpretation of the world. So
I see.
Like, I think that decade, like 2000s to late 2010s, that decade was really influential and impactful for me, because I was exposed to all of these shows. I don't know how many of those shows still exist, because that was like the peak television generation, right? We had internet, but we did not have like a very rich content side on the internet.
It was all about television.
Exactly, it was all about television. So I was exposed to, I think, one of the highest, like, richest decade of television content. That had a huge impact, especially for scientific content. I think all of these shows. Then we also had Richard Attenborough, David Attenborough. We used to have like his Blue Planet, Blue World.
Wonderful.
Exactly. So that was like an amazing decade. So that was my beginning. Like, I used to like be fascinated. I used to watch these shows for hours and hours. Later on, obviously, as I got more hooked up to the internet, I think that is late 2010s, or when like people used to have broadband. People got broadband at their houses. And people used to have like very shitty connections, like very slow connections, but there used to be some exposure to Facebook, to YouTube. That was like late 2010s. Like 2010s, early 2010s. Later on, I think when 4G came, that was a revolution.
That was when the word content came to mean online stuff like videos or text or something. But there it was not really connected to that. I think after that only lots of different mediums came out.
Exactly.
Different kinds of content. So that's when it was the boom.
That was a boom. Like, almost, I guess every major successful YouTube channel started back in 2008-2009. So I think that beginning, like the initial push didn't happen before 2014. After 2014, I think one of the earliest content which I used to consume regularly was TED Talks.
Yes. At that point of time, it was the only content of its time. Now there are lots of people who give similar kinds of things, but at that time.
So that I used to look at TED Talks for motivation, inspirational talk, because TED Talks had like all of these. Like, it wasn't like just a single person doing something or saying something. It was like a bunch of people, scientists. We had actors, we had celebrities, we had models, we had doctors, we had all kinds of people, comedians. So that exposure sort of diversified and like it boomed technically for me. So I was hooked to TED for a long time. That as well as Wikipedia, because Wikipedia was also investing a lot in content. They used to like have several of these get-togethers throughout the world where they can attract editors and people, because Wikipedia wanted to diversify to other languages. Wikipedia was quite I think established in early 2010s, but that was limited to English and somewhat Spanish languages, even European. Non-European, African, Asian languages did not have that huge of a library for Wikipedia. They were investing a lot. They were also organizing get-togethers. I remember visiting a few get-togethers in Pune.
Wow.
So
you do know a lot about content.
So like I was sort of fascinated by, because I did not know that anyone can edit Wikipedia. I actually got to know the process of how a Wikipedia
Okay.
article is created right from a scratch,
Oh.
and how they had reviewers, moderators who used to check that Wikipedia remains bug free, Wikipedia remains fake news free, because apparently if anyone can make an edit, and then obviously
Yeah,
it'll it means that
get corrupted.
exactly it can
Yeah.
be corrupted very easily.
Yeah.
So I was that way a fan of Wikipedia, and obviously in schools and other places, people used to say that you shouldn't trust Wikipedia because of certain
It's a very
controversies.
a non-intuitive kind of way of like sharing information.
Yeah.
You don't expect that there will be some medium where anyone can. It's like a GitHub repository, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyone can put their content, and it turns out to be quite good.
Yeah.
In the end, it's quite good. Yeah.
I think that public sourcing started with Wikipedia. Nowadays we have several forums. We have Reddit, which has also exploded.
Yeah.
Wikipedia was like a very formal source. Reddit exists. I mean, there was Reddit and 4chan. So
Okay.
there's this thing called 4chan, which started out as a Japanese thing. So
Okay.
it was similar to how Americans used to have a chat box in 1990s late.
Okay.
This 4chan was like a Japanese version of a chat board. So where you can just like have several channels. On those channels you can post messages. 4chan is like a pretty basic version of Reddit. Reddit started after that.
Okay.
So it was like again a revolution in terms of how people can interact throughout the world. People can get to know other people without like spending a lot of time, or we can anonymously share resources. So Reddit sort of gave that power to people who did not want to like do something at the cost of their privacy. That was, I think, again a huge revolution for me, because I got introduced to Reddit because of that.
Yeah.
Because of Wikipedia, I got introduced to Reddit, not the other way around.
I see.
Then later on, I think we had all of these content creators sort of coming up. We had Joe Rogan. I think you might be able to tell me.
I got very late into all kinds of content because like personally you talked about the science communication revolution.
Yeah.
I was out of that because I think it didn't penetrate as much in
Yeah.
India as it did in the West.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
probably we had different kinds of shows. I watched a lot of Discovery, Nat Geo, and some random other shows in History TV also. But you were talking about this. So you mentioned something right now. No? I think I forgot.
Reddit?
Yeah, Reddit and
4chan.
4chan, yeah.
4chan.
Yeah.
So
So I also got very late into all of that. I got into podcast later on during COVID.
Yeah.
That was the first time I actually read or listened to a podcast. And then I listened to a lot more.
Yeah. So podcast, I think even I got to know it in late 2018, because 2018, I guess I was really bored at that time, and I really wanted like an out. I really wanted to know what is happening outside, and I used to read a lot of news before. So for me, it was just news, but I didn't know what other entertainment sources are there online. And with I guess that was also a year where I got unlimited internet connection at a very high speed. So that was, I think, the beginning of 50 Mbps, 100 Mbps fiber plans.
Yeah.
So that sort of got me more into these long form contents, because long form contents in India earlier we did not
text based.
Exactly, not it was just text based, and it was easier to download, so we could access it.
Actually.
But once we had high speed internet, I think that sort of propelled it to a new level. So I used to watch certain interview channels. Like there were
what I feel is we'll talk about podcasts later in more detail, and we'll also talk about some recommendation good one. But let's continue with other content, because I want podcast to be a separate section itself.
Right.
Since we are also doing one. So okay, you can continue.
So I feel I usually watch like a lot of scientific content, because I think you need to be very creative. Like if you like, let's say it's very easy to like record travel vlogs, because people will watch it, because like there is a market for it.
It's easier being creative
Exactly.
there than it is with other things like science
Yeah, because
or finance or those
those
more
are pretty tricky subjects to tackle.
more
Yeah.
maths related stuff.
Yeah. Because for like there's going to be people who are going to watch you dance if you dance well.
Yeah.
There's going to be people who'll find something interesting. Comedies, obviously, everyone watches comedy online, so it's like a very selling
yeah,
market.
it's
Like
a selling
it can be any TV show,
Recreation.
any recreational show.
Yeah.
People going to watch, or if it's like it's something slapstick, which is like involve your physical action. Like you watch, there's this show called Just for Laugh Gags. It was a very
I've heard
popular
that, I've
show.
heard
It used
about
to
it.
stream on Pogo TV,
I've
on
heard
Cartoon Network. So they used to do
Okay.
pranks, these prank videos.
I have
So-
seen it. I have
Exactly.
seen
So it's
big
very
videos.
easy to like get
Hmm.
popular with that.
Get some audience.
Yeah, get some audience, but it's very difficult for you to be popular with science, because science itself, like if let's say you are good with science, how do you communicate, how do you like take it to people? Because ultimately none of like a huge chunk of the population, including like most people even associated with science, they don't know how to make it creative outside textbooks.
How to make it interesting,
Yeah.
make a story out of it.
Exactly.
You know the details, but how can you show a big picture to someone else?
Hmm. So I remember a very influential show which I used to watch was Mythbusters.
I think I have watched. With me, it was like on television, whatever comes, and if I have the control over the remote, then I'll watch it more.
Yeah.
If there's someone else who has control, he'll watch his thing. I'll still watch. I'll watch what others are watching. So I watch very randomly. So I do know a little bit about everything. So how was it?
So yeah, Mythbusters used to have like it was the first thing which popularized, because they used to like seriously have live audience doing the stuff at the end of every episode. They used to have a live segment where they used to go to people, huge crowds, like thousands of people, and they used to do a public experiment.
Oh.
So for example, there's a very popular episode where they show if like your clothes catch fire or not, like what makes your clothes catch fire earlier or faster. So they showed like there's this thing called fabric softener, right? So fabric softener, apparently people who wash their clothes with fabric softener, their clothes are more likely to get burnt than people who don't use fabric softener, because there is this there's this polymer layer which gets formed in front of that, and that sort of makes it more flammable. And to prove that, they had a huge audience, and in front of that two people, like there's a control, like in science you have a control sample,
And
then you have a test or a treatment sample. So that's how they did it, and that was like a very huge scale, high budget production. So that is something which also like influenced me, because I didn't know that this is how science could be done, because it was just lab experiments or like certain like there is this
Certain
guy called
small-
Arvind Gupta, right? You might know Arvind Gupta. He had like basically Arvind Gupta was a pioneer in Indian sci popularization, because he used to have like these toys, these scientific toys which he makes. He has a book with Scholastic and other publishers. He is based in Pune. So Arvind Gupta is a very popular guy in designing very easy to understand experiments, but which have like a very intense scientific principle behind it. But once you see it in action, like how a top rotates, or what precession is, or how exactly these things how daily things function, how vibration of air creates sound. So that is something which Arvind Gupta used to deal with, very school level principles, but once you like apply them, you understand them better.
You can
Yeah.
kind of, it becomes tangible for you.
Exactly,
It's no
exactly.
longer just a concept that
Yeah.
you need to keep in your mind.
So for me, science experiments were like just those kind of experiments. I
Yeah.
didn't know that you can do it on such a huge scale,
Okay.
or you can have like live audience, you can have interactive audience. Because I think in Mythbusters did a thing where they actually had astronauts on the ISS do an experiment for them, and they streamed it to the TV. Like basically they could like genuinely describe an experiment, and the astronauts on the ISS, International Space Station, could do it in front of them.
Okay.
They can like bust the myth immediately.
Yeah.
So it's like a very science, I think, is a very broad umbrella term. And another one which I think I was confused earlier, but I think I'm a huge fan of him now, is VSauce.
VSauce.
There's a guy called Michael from VSauce.
Yeah.
He has a degree in scientific communication.
Oh,
I did not know
yes,
like
yes.
you could have a degree that exists only in the West, I guess. In India, I don't know, think most people have that degree, or even people are aware of such degree might exist. But that's a huge field, because ultimately, as a scientist, I think as a researcher, whatever we do, that should have some connection with the end user, which is everyone else. So that I think was a huge influence, because VSauce used to make a video on everything.
On everything.
Everything, anything.
Every kind of very distant kind of topics, very unrealistic questions he'll pose in front of you, which don't really have much relevance.
Yeah.
But he'll talk about it.
He'll dig deep.
Dig
He'll
very-
definitely like go to the very crux of that point. He'll like sort of excavate fossils of that some random thing.
Yeah.
There's language, there's social studies, there's history, there's all kinds of topics which we can learn from VSauce. So that
and he has a very unique way of, very dramatic way of showing things. So that is also unique to his channel.
yeah, right.
He keeps you engaged. Yeah.
So that was, I mean, how can he had a video on some I guess some phrase or like it was some English related video, and the video was 40 minutes long, just on why this phrase exists. He went right back to Shakespeare. Before that he went to the Anglo-Romanic Empire. He went back like thousands of years to just understand why a certain thing happens. So I think that was again a very huge influence for me.
And from that you can also know that there are some people who are very interested in things, and still they do really quite good stuff, interesting stuff. So they are like role models for some people.
Yeah.
Like, you can have those kinds of role models, because usually if you see influencers, celebrities, they have a different kind of persona. So it's good that students also look up to other kind of people, science communicators, or maybe who are doing some social work or those kinds of things. So it's good to have a varied content.
Definitely.
Around,
So I was a huge fan of that. Then obviously Netflix came, Amazon, all of these other Hotstar, everything sort of blossomed after 2018, 2017. So I think that thing sort of took over, and we had like all of these docu. Oh, I forgot about this very popular Indian channel called Epic.
Oh yes, I loved it.
Yeah.
I searched for it so much after I left home for my bachelor studies. I searched so much for some of the shows, but I couldn't really find on YouTube or anywhere.
So most people don't know it. It was found jointly by Anand Mahindra and Ambani.
Oh, is it?
It's a Mahindra and Ambani initiative. They wanted to bring the Indian culture to.
Wow, I thought it was at Devdutt Pattanaik a lot, so I thought he might have started.
No, it was a very richly found,
very well made channel.
So I was a huge fan of two shows there, Raja Rasoi or Anya Kahaniya, which was like a very nice show. Then they used to have like this Mahabharata show, where they showed Yudhishthira. So it was like a post-math of Mahabharata.
I was thinking about that show. So there was this show where they are in heaven.
Yes.
There's a quote in front of them.
Yeah, Chitragupta. They are telling everything Chitragupta. They're justifying their actions.
So they are calling witnesses.
Yeah.
They are like defending on different accusations. It was beautiful. Such a philosophical, mythological stuff. I searched for it a bit afterwards, but maybe I'll again.
I think part of that content is on YouTube.
It was very well made, very thoughtful,
very nice,
very engaging also.
Yeah.
You don't need to know about history, mythology or details of it, but still you can make sense, because these are just arguments, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't know that others were also there who have seen that.
it was like
Because
a
nobody in my home was interested in that. So,
exactly
yeah,
right.
I used
It's like
to,
a very
when I have control over the television, I'll just switch to that quickly. But people.
Epic was interesting. We had Devdutt Pattanaik who used to
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
I think that guy has a very fresh perspective. And considering he came
Very
from a
fresh
medical
perspective,
background,
yes.
it was more inspirational for him because he wasn't doing it for money, obviously, right? He was doing it because genuinely had an interest in the mythology, in our culture. So that was one of the best shows, I think. Devdutt Pattanaik
And he
show
got
and other shows.
another thing about Devdutt Pattanaik, yeah, as you said, it's the same thing. He was doing it for his own interest.
Exactly.
And he got into consulting and corporate actually.
Yeah.
And there he used to use the principles of mythology
Yeah.
and the lessons he learned from scriptures.
Yeah.
And actually corporates used to welcome him that you are doing us quite
Definitely.
a lot of adding value to us. That's quite interesting. So he gives a very unique perspective on everything.
Another guy who does that very he got into limelight pretty recently, but I used to follow him from a long time. Is Acharya Prashant. Are you aware of Acharya?
I have seen some clips on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I.
So that guy, he started his channel in 2017-16, but he used to be like a motivational speaker before, and so that guy Acharya Prashant, he actually has an IIT degree, BTech from IIT. Then it is IIM. He is also an IIM alumnus. Then he went into UPSC. He was a civil servant for a while. After that, he quit that and he went into consulting.
Oh, I see.
He was a very pretty avid scripture guy. He is a very huge, ardent defender of Vedanta philosophy, Sanatan Hindu philosophy. So that was a very interesting guy because he used to explain everything like modern problems, but based on the basic tenets of what Vedanta philosophy is about or what ancient Indian knowledge system is about. So I think I used to consume a lot of. I don't anymore because right now it's the content has become more and more I think it's become more of a preachy content than how it used to be before, which was more of philosophical and a discourse used to happen. Nowadays, what I feel is even with Sadhguru and several other gurus, it's the more popular they become, it's difficult to keep the content as unfiltered or as it was before. Now people mostly do based at least what they post or they must be doing it offline, but whatever is posted online is more of a mainstream problem than
maybe it's it turns towards self-help a bit. I feel more on the superficial side of things. So there is always some agenda which comes up intentionally or unintentionally. So it happens. It's
so
fine. Yeah.
That's what happened. So then I moved into, I guess, podcast and stuff.
Oh, I see. So that was your journey till podcast.
I mean, yeah, and I used to also watch a lot of fiction, fan fiction. Then I don't know. I'm a huge
fiction is very underrated.
Fiction, yeah, because
especially among oldies. They think it's just imagination running wild for people just trying to engage themselves with some stuff, but there's more to it. Yeah.
Then you also had AIB. There was a phase. AIB was a phase. I mean, there was no one more woke than AIB because I have followed AIB since their on air with AIB days, and even before that, when Tanmay or Rohan used to have a certain segment on different channels. So I think AIB was a different mood. I mean, it's unfortunate that they got closed because of several reasons, but AIB with the first on air with AIB, with the AIB roast, with the second on air with AIB, with AIB Divas, with other AIB shows, I think they have just carved out such a huge niche in India. But they have had a huge influence on all of the other creators. If you look at the video after AIB videos, I think AIB is all of these guys are
opened
wonderful.
Up many new doors.
All of those guys
many
are
new
exceptional.
Topics on which then people. I never really got into it. I was a bit slow with.
It's completely fine because in the end also, I also felt that I wasted a lot of time, but now I miss that, probably because there isn't, I would say, because of the quantity, it's very difficult to dig out the quality stuff out of the huge number
Yeah,
of.
now that's the challenge. It's
Yeah.
not about the good stuff, it's about how you find it and how you'll know that you have found it.
Exactly. So what did you watch, or what did you?
I also, let's talk about it some other time. I'll say
Sure.
about my own preferences, my interests, my
Sure.
what actually helped me, what was helped me during my times to get to know about things. So yeah, I had my own sets of preferences. Maybe some other time we can, because let's go on with the other thing.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I wanted to talk to you about. So there's the oldest form of content, newspapers,
Yeah.
right? They're still there. But I want to know what's your view on. Anyways, news shows are out of the scene now. Like
They have just become entertainment shows.
Let's not waste our time talking about
Yeah.
it. It's entertainment, propaganda, outrage, whatever
Controversies
you want to
or-
say. It's
Just
now there's nothing left in them. But what do you think about newspapers? Are they still relevant now? At one point of time they were the best and the only source of information. But
Yeah.
how relevant are they now? Because I don't think there are many people now who actually spend even 10 minutes a day on newspaper.
I mean, that again
But-
depends.
Because now it's in shorts and some other apps which give you some trendy news. But in terms of newspapers, how things have changed, and do you think, or how much you think they are relevant today?
Okay, I think there are two parts to this. Like we have, like, even in the country, whenever I have been outside like a major city, newspaper have a huge impact. Because if you look at the statistics, India has right now the highest number of newspaper readers, I guess, in the world.
I see.
Because the number of newspapers is increasing. And where is it spreading? It's spreading to all of the villages. It's reaching out to certain towns which had no access, which had very low literacy rate. So newspaper was the only, is still the only source of information for a lot of these aspects. I think there is this also, there is this very nice documentary on newspapers and their impact. I think it's on Netflix. It's about a female-run newspaper, like a women-run initiative in UP, rural UP, and their entire team, their journalist team, their editor team is completely just women, and they cover all of these issues. They cover politics, because newspapers still have a very huge impact in politics. You can't deny that, because there are still political journalists who won't speak on TV, but who would do very intense research and they would publish in the newspapers.
That is also one.
So there are certain
One good
experts
thing
who
about
do
it,
this,
yeah.
and I think I'm a huge fan of this. There's this guy, there's this newspaper called Sagan in Marathi. It's a very famous newspaper in Maharashtra. So it used to have articles by Dr. Sandeep Vaslekar. So Sandeep Vaslekar is head of a think tank. So he leads a think tank called Strategic Foresight Groups. So what they do is they help in international peacekeeping. They help people sort out several issues at the international level, at the United Nations level. And when this guy writes something in the newspaper, you obviously have a huge credibility for that. So I think credibility wise, newspapers still have a very huge thing. But in terms of time, yes, I would say for me personally it's not relevant, because I can just read stuff online, or I can go to YouTube, I can get like an auditory, because that's faster in a way that I don't have to engage my eyes. I can do something else while I get the newsfeed right in my ears. So I personally prefer that. I don't know how healthy that is, but I have seen people in my house, I have seen people who spend hours reading newspapers, so, and it's healthy. Because newspaper also have a variety of content, right?
Yeah.
And people still but I think consider newspaper advertisements as a very valid source. And the government uses it to advertise. So
Actually, yeah.
that wouldn't have happened if we didn't have like a huge crowd who reads newspaper regularly. So
Because it's considered that if you have like given out something, some advertisement or something on newspaper, you have made things public.
yeah,
Still, that
Yeah.
kind of perception is there.
we have a physical evidence, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy to tamper with newspapers compared to online websites.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's that.
Also, one thing about newspapers, I feel you touched upon it, that it's more credible. The kind of content you get on newspapers, that's one thing. There might be a bias, of course, which I think it is there. It's fine. There are of course a diverse set of articles or content, so you can go for whatever you like. But another good thing is that it's much more difficult to mislead people or grab people's attention on you through text or through newspapers than it is with videos and different shorter mediums, reels. So in that sense, people have more control over what they are reading, and that's a good thing, I feel.
Yeah.
That's better for their own education, I shouldn't call it, but their own sanity, I guess.
Yeah, because definitely,
Because,
definitely.
to have control over your own thoughts and beliefs, let's say.
It feels less of a propaganda in the newspaper because you get a you get a balanced view mostly, not always, but I mean obviously some newspaper are just mouthpieces of parties. So that's okay. I mean that's fine.
But you, as a reader, you get a chance to think for yourself about. It's a lot about psychology actually when it comes to content or advertising, because it's advertisement, it's synonymous content. So that's it.
For political news, I think I would still read a newspaper over some news channel.
True. Okay, you asked about my preferences. So maybe I'll talk about it later only. Let's move on to some other things. I have told on the way my own opinions on things. So usually I don't consume as much, but I do keep opinions. I do think about stuff. So I have maybe shared a bit on the way.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, last time we just touched upon books, so that's
okay.
Close to me. I'll say that topic. So I talked a little about some of the books I recently reading, but I want to know, you have read a lot, especially at school, I suppose.
I guess so, yeah.
Especially at school, a lot of fiction.
Not a lot, but like I used to.
Good enough. So
I used to read frequently.
So just tell me about the books you read or have recently read, which had an impact on you or which you will recommend, and I'll also share on the way my own experiences with them.
Sure. Okay. What was the last book I read? I honestly in this year I haven't read any books. I'm surprised, but
it's fine. Whatever you used to, what got you started with books?
So I used to read a lot of encyclopedias and stuff. Because
Tell me why, you know.
Tell me why, yeah.
At that point of time, it was its own thing. Amar Chitrakatha.
Exactly, Amar Chitrakatha, Tinker, all of those I've read.
All those magazines.
Chanda Mama, all of those I've read.
For you, Carl Sagan and those shows were what got you into science.
Yeah.
But for me, it was these magazines. I was more into reading actually than.
Reader's Digest was a pretty famous
Reader's
thing.
Digest also, I got into it. I spent a couple of years very much engrossed in it. But initially I started with Tell Me Why, some encyclopedias. Those were quite,
I think I used to be like a very like a fact mongerer in a way, because I used to read all of these stuff. I used to read Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh.
I don't know why. I just used to read and find the weirdest world record there is. Like how long, how many pizzas one can hold in their mouth, or how many hot dogs a person consumed in a day. Some random world record I used to read. So that I remember. I was a very huge fan of Ripley's Believe It or Not. So Ripley's Believe It or Not is a collection of weird facts. Like It's a very you won't understand it until you see it, and then Ripley in the end Ripley reveals if it's a real thing or a fake thing.
I got it. Yeah.
So that's based on, it's like a very nice public, like a game, family game, where you can sit and you can discuss the facts and you can see if this is a fact or this is a myth. So that I used to enjoy. I used to read a lot of Britannica stuff. Britannica used to have their own set of encyclopedias. You should read that. Reader's Digest mostly. So I was subscribed to this place called British Council. So British Council has several libraries in India. So
you had touched upon it. Yeah, tell more about
so British Library. What its purpose is to, it's like a library, it's like a public library where you can go and access books. You can also access all kinds of English content. It's mostly English. They had a huge collection of DVDs, educational DVDs, then self-help books. They used to conduct courses on different kind of writing. They used to conduct courses on reading. So I was affiliated to British Library for quite some time.
Okay.
So
And is there some
Sunday.
process?
Yeah. So right now there's a British Library in Bangalore also. It's a very big library in Bangalore. It's like 3-4 floors big. And you can go to their website. You can purchase their membership, which is like, I guess, a couple thousand rupees. But they have like the best sellers. They also have like old classics. They have all kinds of books there. So you can access that. You can also access their online library. They have a rich collection of online library which you can access. There's also, so I used to go there only for their internet, because they used to have pretty fast internet, and I used to play a lot of games on their computer. So that was in 2008, 2009 story. Then sometimes I used to also get books, and I used to get CDs, DVDs.
You must be quite young, 2008, 2009.
Yeah, I was very young.
Maybe below 10.
Yeah.
7
under
or
10,
8
under
years
10.
ago.
Yeah.
7 or 8 years old. So
So that was that time. Then later on, after because of my school timings, it was very difficult for me to visit there every Sunday, every weekend. So I used to go there like once a month or so. But still, I used to read like books from the library. I was a huge fan of Marathi literature back then. So I got into Marathi literature a lot. I used to read all of these Marathi sci-fi books. So Marathi
sci-fi books.
Yeah. So
Marathi. Okay.
There's a very famous astrophysicist from India who currently works at IISC, Dr. Jayant Narlikar. You might have heard.
Yeah.
So he has a very interesting theory of the universe with Hoyle. Hoyle Narlikar has a very, so they are anti-Big Bang. So according to his theory, a Big Bang is a myth. Big Bang never existed. It just like, because of certain thermodynamic inconsistencies, the universe evolved the way it is. But it's going to evolve. There's not going to be a big crunch, or there's not going to be an end to this. So that's his theory, which is Narlikar and Hoyle theory. Hoyle Narlikar. It's a very famous theory especially for physics, people who love physics. Then there's also.
Where does he work right now?
Right now he's retired. His two daughters. His wife is Mangala Narlikar is a very famous educationist. She is also a professor at several universities. She's also an advisor to the NCRT and also Maharashtra State Board. So she helps in designing. She's a mathematician. So she helps in devising.
You had CBSE.
I had CBSE. Yeah.
Science content in CBSE was fine.
It was okay.
Science.
I mean,
I felt it was quite decent.
It was decent.
The way it was written, the way they had lots of experiments to which they used to. Now when I look back at it, I think it was pretty good job they did writing the book.
It was pretty comprehensive. They touched upon the basics and
maybe it was not so advanced, but it was pretty well written.
It was pretty well written and well compiled, because they tried to cover several important topics. And so Narlikar currently lives near NCL, National Chemical Laboratory in Pune, Pashan. So he has a house there. He lives with his wife. I guess. So there's his daughters are currently professors at IISC. One of his daughters is not IISC, sorry, IISR Pune.
Okay.
So his daughter works on mathematics and mathematical modeling.
Okay.
and his other daughter is, I guess, doing her PhD or probably is a professor in the US. So both of the family is very well accomplished,
Yeah.
and that person has written sci-fi plays, science fiction plays in Marathi. He has written science fiction stories. He has written books on AI in Marathi.
Oh.
He has written, I mean, I think that's a very, very rich heritage with Marathi literature has, because we had Jayant Narlikar. Most other languages don't have a huge repository of scientific books in their language.
Exactly.
I don't think even Hindi
does
has.
not have it.
Yeah, because most people even in the northern belt, I think they prefer writing in English over Hindi. But I don't think why, like, there's,
I think
because
the scientific technique in India was never really had a stronghold. India was
Yeah.
more into mystics, myths, and more of
Yeah.
spiritual things. So maybe that's the reason still Hindi has more of that kind of
Yeah.
content.
One thing which I would like to point out of Marathi is that we had certain literary geniuses who translated scientific content to Marathi. So you must have heard of this very, like, currently he's trending, but he has been trending in Maharashtra for a long time, Savarkar. So Savarkar has translated a lot of scientific terminologies into Marathi. Most people don't know that, but most. So what's a computer called in Hindi?
Some long name, some yantra.
Sanganak. So Sanganak is a
Sanganak.
word which Savarkar formulated.
Oh, I
most
see.
of the scientific
Sanganak.
terminologies were computing, which is Sanganaki, or to
yeah.
compute.
Yes.
So that is something which Marathi has had. So I never felt like I was I wasn't exposed to a lot of content, because everything was translated to Marathi. And usually I have seen this in Marathi households. There's this culture of reading. Like in any educated Marathi household you go, people have exposure to reading. There is some self-help book translated to Marathi. There is some book which is in Marathi. So I used to read like all of these books on travels and it's culinary arts, culture. There's every Marathi book you can find, and there are Marathi people who there's this lady called Meena Prabhu.
Okay.
She is a traveler, and she's a traveler at heart. She has a book. There's an entire book. Okay, that book has her travel experiences, and it's in all 7 continents.
Oh,
That
wow.
lady has Meena Prabhu has traveled the entire world, over 150 countries, and she has a book for every country.
Oh,
All of them
wow.
are on Amazon. There are almost 25 books. She has an entire
I
book
think
on
I
just
should get
China.
one.
There's this
I
book
should
called
get
Chini
one.
Mati. I have never read a more comprehensive book on China's culture and China's progress than her, because she went there twice. She went in the 1980s and 1990s. So that was a time where China had just sort of re-emerged as a. So that book is very, very informative. I think if anyone understands Marathi, they should definitely read Chini Mati to understand how China functions.
I see.
Because she went there as a tourist, but she spent there almost.
It gives you a
several
different
months.
perspective,
Exactly.
a more fresher perspective of things.
Huh.
Instead of being like biased and rooted in the cultural or history of that country, a new person looks at it from a new view, and that's
I think
better.
that's the thing about Asia and foreign or Western authors, Western content creators. They don't have that closeness associated with our culture, Asian and Indian culture, compared to our own authors. So when we have our own people design such content, it's obviously going to resonate more with us. Because when we compare the cultures, that's when we understand, right? When a Westerner compares his culture to Korean culture or Chinese culture, they are going to obviously look at it in a very analytical way. But when an Indian goes to China, when an Indian goes to Pakistan, to Sri Lanka, that's when we appreciate that, okay, their culture is so much similar to us.
We know the essence of
Yeah.
lots of things they do.
Exactly.
For others, it might not make look illogical arrangement, but we know a bit about
So
why
that's
things.
when I got to more on the Indian side. I used to be a fan of, I used to read more of Indian authors and less of foreign authors.
Oh, I see.
So that was that. But I think books are important. Books are very books you can
I don't know.
take you to a different world.
Uh,
For me, it's more than videos, but videos save time, so I prefer watching videos a lot.
okay, yeah, they definitely do. Yeah. Good, good. For me also, I read a lot. I read a lot of Reader's Digest. I will say.
Hmm.
So, and it has all kinds of varied contents and really quality stuff.
Yeah.
Like unparalleled stories, articles, just movie recommendations, book recommendations, everything's there.
Everything's there.
I even used to read the editor's page, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Forward kind of thing. So, yeah, I spend a lot of time on magazines and all. Then, of course, fiction came. We didn't talk about fiction yet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I got into non-fiction and other books. Again, I have started picking up,
Hmm.
started buying books again. So that's it. So how much did you really like? How much did? So from what I have understood, you read a lot related to science, facts, news,
Yeah.
like people Guinness World, Guinness Book of World Records, and traveling books. But how much were you into fiction and like how much time you spent relative to other books which you read?
So, I think I used to read a fiction or two. Like usually I used to alternate between a non-fiction and a fiction book.
Okay.
Okay, like right
I
now
see.
I'm reading a non-fiction. I'll move to
I
fiction
see,
next.
I see.
I think uh, for me, hands down, the biggest series I have read so far in fiction is Harry Potter. And Harry Potter is also like a huge influence for me because otherwise I have read a couple of Shakespearean things, a couple of I used to read like the
Harry
old
Potter-
classics by
Harry Potter is something you can relate to very closely.
Yeah.
Very closely. I
yeah
would say.
yeah
It's about kids who have grown up by the end of the series.
and it's all about like all of the age when you are reading it, like especially for me because I read it while growing, so I could relate to all of that stuff. I could relate to like okay the friendships they have, the importance of friendship, the relationships they have. I think books
Yeah.
make you a lot more mature than you give them
Yes,
credit
because
for.
every character will have his own personality,
Yeah.
will have his own thoughts, actions, and you can then contrast between different people.
Yeah. You can actually
This is
translate books to real life sometimes. That doesn't
yeah.
usually happen in like core fiction, which is like I mean which is I don't know. With books I can like picture characters and I can picture them in real life. But in other forms of media, it's for me at least it's a bit difficult. But for books, when it comes to books, it's like I can relate to a lot of characters. I can understand them. I can also like get exposed to certain emotions which I haven't experienced, but the characters have experienced.
Yeah, you can give name to lots of
Yeah.
emotions which you might be experiencing, you might just be
Yeah.
pushing it under the rug. I don't know what's. But yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility, I think,
Yeah.
reading fiction, of imagining things your own way.
What
So you were talking about other things that you Shakespeare related or something?
Shakespeare I have so Julius Caesar I've read Macbeth. I've read Othello a bit. But like I have restricted Shakespeare because I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of probably of classics back then. Right now I am, but I don't have the time. So
Okay.
whenever I will get time, I'll probably get back to Shakespeare.
Classics.
I'll
Okay.
get back to Coleridge and people, Coleridge, Wordsworth. So they have like pretty intense stuff.
Pretty. There was one book. So CBSE had good English
Yeah.
literature. I'll
CBSE had a very
I'll really commend them for what they had. At that time, it was a pain. Many of it, like we had Julius Caesar,
yeah.
that Albatross.
Yeah,
poem,
yeah, by Coleridge, Samuel
by
Taylor Coleridge. Yeah,
I remember
Albatross.
that only from that poem. And then Wordsworth also.
Wordsworth was a very
you
popular.
can recall any poem? William Wordsworth.
Daffodils.
Daffodils.
Daffodils is a pretty famous poem.
Oh yeah, beautiful. So these things were there, right? And at that time, it used to feel like, why are we
Exactly.
having to scratch our head so much over these things? But now feels that we were exposed to a lot of good literature, like old good literature.
Not just English, even Hindi. CBSE Hindi had such
Hindi
rich
had
articles.
Yeah.
Indira Verma कह लो, सूर्यकांत त्रिपाठी निराला कह लो, Premchand,
Premchand.
all of these people we had.
What was the first name you told?
Indira Verma.
Indira Verma. Okay, there was one more female writer. It's been too long now. I can't recall. But lots of good writers from UP, Bihar.
Yeah.
Those who come from the very, what I'll say, untouched, authentic Hindi background. So lots of their works are also there.
Yeah.
Then we had Mahabharata, Ramayana and everything.
Amar Chitra Katha has everything.
Like in CBSE itself,
In
Amar
CBSE,
Chitra Katha was a parallel thing. I used to read that a lot. My mom was also a very big reader.
Okay.
So I had access to books. I made full use of it.
Wow.
That's big
nice.
part
That's
of my
great.
childhood. So also I was talking about just going on with CBSE. So we had in English we had lots of supplementary reading materials, right? So at that time it didn't make sense why supplementary was. So we had Anne Frank, Gulliver's Travels.
We had Helen Keller.
Yeah.
3 Men in a Boat.
That was optional, I think, for
That was
us. So I didn't read. But Anne Frank was really eye-opening.
Yeah. Gulliver's
It was a very mature writing which students of 9th and 10th were reading.
But like she was the same age as us. Like,
She was the same
she was
age.
13 and 14 when she wrote all of that. So for
The family dynamics she portrayed.
yeah.
It was very unblemished, I would say.
Definitely.
Crazily. Maybe people don't really think, I don't know if they do, but it was very unblemished the way she portrayed.
Definitely. Anne Frank is a must read for everyone because it's so, the language is so easy. You don't have to like struggle anywhere. You can just relate to that girl pretty easily and her struggles.
Like if she comes to know that the diaries I used to write about my own infatuations as well as my own look at adults and everything. I don't know how she reacted, but it was a big contribution to.
Definitely. I mean, one of the best records of how people struggled during the
I think
during the second Holocaust.
Yeah, I like with books we can just go on and on.
Go on and on.
There are lots of, still we have not talked about lots of subjects, but let's keep it for some other time. It's fine. So okay.
Should we discuss a bit of podcast or?
So we can. I still have a few topics which we can talk about. Actually, it's not necessary to cover everything.
Yeah.
Better to just discuss some few things well. So I think podcast we can skip for.
Okay.
What feels the most interesting to you? Something what the audience also might prefer more. Something that's different from what we've been talking about maybe till now. What do you want? All of these are close to me, so you can choose any.
We can probably talk about mental health a bit.
Sure.
We don't have to like go into details, but
Sure, yeah. Especially youth mental health.
Yeah.
I guess.
Because that's a huge issue which isn't discussed openly usually. I mean, obviously people have a lot of stuff online available, but I think it's still important to create that discussion. Start
Right
the conversation
now,
itself.
we are like as a generation, we are in sort of such a transition in terms of technology, in terms of just our environment, in terms of our perspective on things.
Yeah.
Like mentality we have towards lots of different education, family, relationships, career. So there's been a big transition on how we used to think about these things and now, and we are right now somewhat in the middle, or maybe we have somewhere we are in that phase. So adjusting to it
Hmm.
is, I think, a challenge for every person. Probably that's what causes so much friction and
Yeah,
mental
definitely.
mental wellness issues. So I think, yeah, it's always good to talk about it. Like recently, I'll tell you, there's a wellness group in IISC, wellness committee. So they had organized. I think I forgot to invite you because I also wasn't planning to.
Okay.
So they had organized session in faculty hall. So it's a big hall where a therapist, kind of psychologist therapist, had come. She explained a bit on how you can deal with these things.
Hmm.
She spread a bit of awareness of how these are and how you can help others.
Hmm.
So I think these things are quite important.
Hmm.
It's like a toolkit you addition to your toolbox, and it's always good to have a range of tools. So this is also a very important thing to keep you going in your life. With so much being around, so many things, there's always more than you can manage. It's overwhelming. So
Yeah.
it's good to talk about such issues. So tell me, what what are your thoughts on it? Anything?
I think people probably underestimate it, but we, because of the huge amount of technology we are surrounded with, I think the expectation and the stress levels have increased because I think people think probably our senior, like our parents' generation or the millennial generation or the boomer generation, we think they had it worse, but back then you still had something to look forward to probably because you had a future. Right now, I think a huge, I can't emphasize it in more. If people want to know, they can read books for it. But AI is such a huge threat that it can destroy mental health, mental wellness of almost everyone who
Just the uncertainty
just
that
the
it brings
uncertainty. Exactly, because
to things.
you when you know that okay, you can be better, you can upskill yourself, but if when you know that there's some other system who can do the same thing you are doing except 10 times better and they can learn faster than you, they don't age, they don't have to worry about family and stuff, it can just do the work you are doing. I think that is a huge setback. So this is going to create a huge, I think, gap between the people who have the resources who can afford AI versus people who can't afford AI, who will be left behind in the competition. And that is going to have a very worse impact on these people. Especially, I think we would have a huge class difference, like a class divide which no one would have seen before. We still have, right now we have, but that's a near future that we might have two extremely divided class, and that's what I am afraid of. That's what
Okay, I
sort of
see.
bothers me a lot. That what is my future going to look like, or what is everyone's future around me going to look like, and how can I like, is it even like a point discussing about, because it's going to happen, right? There's this certainty, but
It's going to
problem
happen
is-
and it's going to be highly uncertain.
Yeah.
It's predicting how it will fold out.
it's next to impossible because you don't know the potential, and especially because of the technology, the expectations which human value or human resources have is also increased. People are getting overworked constantly, and that the competition in a sense has increased a lot compared to, let's say, before 1970s 1980s, because information travels so fast. It's always like the world doesn't know how to stop anymore. The world doesn't know how to stop and look back.
You put it well. The world doesn't know how
Yeah,
to stop.
and that's what creating this. I mean, I don't see a point in being a $5 trillion economy, to be very honest. I don't see I'm
That
being
was
very
quite-
frank.
Quite
being-
frank, yeah.
Because if I can't get the quality of mental health, I can't be at peace with myself with 5 trillion, then what's the point?
Yeah, I think these things have to happen. Like considering the world economy, the
Exactly,
different
man. The
countries,
world
it has to
economy.
happen, and it needs to happen. I'll say. And we need to have that slope of
Why?
high gradient of progress. Oh, just so that we can. Firstly, of course, there's a I'll not spend too much time on this, but there's the competition we have with other countries. New things are coming up, semiconductors, AI, space research, and we need to have a good be in the on the forefront to not miss out on
Yeah.
things. So that's there, of course, but it has an impact on the people also.
Exactly.
So I think it's more important to be able to adjust to it rather than trying to forecast things. We have coping mechanisms, because of course there are ways to cope with such stuff,
Yeah.
like to keep your personal life, like have some sanity in your personal life, to have some
Yeah,
space
yeah,
away.
yeah.
So, but yeah, of course we'll have to think more about it, bring things into practice, I
Yeah.
guess. So that's there. I think lots of people do have these kinds of concerns about AI and everything, but they don't know what to make of it, so they just don't bring it up. That's, I think, very common. Everyone has that kind of. Everyone has that at the back of the mind. This thing that what will AI do? How will things be? But it's so scary that people don't talk about it. But you should know that it's scary, and there are ways to maybe just go along.
I think
That's
Yuval
it.
Noah Harari has a pretty strong perspective on this.
Yeah, yeah.
Because in his book Homo Deus, he talks a lot about AI and its perils and what concerns it brings. I think Homo Deus was a very impactful book which got published recently, within the past 5 years. So the potential is there. But
Yeah.
would we like to, I mean, the future itself, indiscriminate development at the cost of a lot of things, I think that's a huge concern which we might have to look forward to, because
Earlier people used to be concerned with getting and sorry for
It's okay.
interrupting in between,
Yeah.
digressing, but earlier used like the pain points for people used to be food, maybe medical services, health, proper like food to get, and also the societal problems were there.
Yeah.
Hierarchies were there, but now it's more about just running as fast as others want you to.
Exactly.
Not being left behind. So still the pain points are there, just things have changed
I
dramatically.
mean, the insecurities have also worsened so much
Yeah,
in the past few years, especially
Yeah.
because of social media.
of course.
You don't know,
Social
because
media.
you know in the back of your head that some person is going to be better than you, but when you see it in front of you happening, that triggers a lot
That
of
triggers.
more insecurities, because you see that happening in front of you, and you then sort of abuse yourself. Literally, you abuse
And
yourself. in
people
that.
abuse you because they don't know what you're going
Exactly.
through. People don't know what others are going through, they push. That's a reality.
In a way, people are becoming more sensitive to all of these content, but also
True.
I think they are losing their compassion in the way. A bit, sure, because people now look at data more than other kinds of things. They look at statistics and data much more than some immeasurable things like happiness.
True. Like, I was thinking about this some time ago too, that lots of things which can't really be quantified accurately and quantified well, tangibly, they get pushed to the sidelines. And then you have few things which take up all your attention.
Exactly.
So that problem will be there, and everyone will have to find their own solution to it. There's no.
So that's
Maybe there
the
are some
issue.
cultural changes you can make, but everyone will have to
Yeah.
tackle it by them. Yeah.
I think that is like something which has affected my mental health a lot.
Yeah, it's a transition, of course. Still, it's affecting everyone.
I to be very honest, like when it comes to a high-paying job versus a mid-paying job, I would prefer the mid-paying job if it has a better, healthier environment compared to the high-paying job, because
And
it's
yeah.
like a very, very huge. I mean, I can't just live my entire life in uncertainty, provided I get like a huge paycheck. It's more about a balance of all everything, right? And that's what lacking in a majority of places
Right
here.
now, the view of people on
Yeah,
such
and
things.
the mood of the nation is
Paycheck has a big.
the mood of the nation is like a big issue right now.
I think it's a lot about, like, since we are talking about mental illness, it's a lot. Maybe we consciously understand it. Many times we think we do understand, but we don't. I think that the people around you, the kind of thoughts they have,
Yeah,
it has a very strong effect on your own, how you look at yourself,
yeah,
as well as how you
absolutely.
just how you see yourself as a person. It has a very big effect.
Definitely.
Your family, those close to you, those around you, friends and all. So it has more effect on wellness, I'll say, than lots of other factors which we think do. It might be pressure of things, it might be some problems that we are facing, but if the people are there around, good people, then like it's the major part of the problem is solved.
And that is why
It's all about staying afloat.
yeah,
If you have people around to keep you afloat, what else do you need?
and that is why I think my respect for my family, friends, and people very close to me has, I mean,
especially now.
skyrocketed.
Yeah. Earlier, family used to be about resources,
Yeah.
about having shared resources. But now it's about emotions, about
Emotional.
having the emotional stability, support. It's all about that now, because that's what is lacking in the current world. Yeah.
It's a very toxic world in every possible way.
So.
The air, water, everything is becoming toxic.
Yeah.
But anyways, not to make everyone feel pessimistic, but I mean
that it's a reality.
that's a reality, and
that
we have
should
to
have.
survive through this, because that's what we are good at. We are good at surviving and evolving.
That's
So
what
we have to do that.
True. Also, you talked about Harari, so
Yeah.
when his first book came, I became a big fan of him. So I also just read a few parts of his third book,
Okay.
21 Lessons for the 21st Century. So there he talks more on the future, how the future might be, how you can adapt with it. So in the end he discusses on mindfulness and mental wellness related, his own take on that. So he tells that this is completely my personal opinion, but I think it can be very helpful for many people. So I keep it in my book, and then he tells about mindfulness, meditation, and other practices you can keep. So I think that was.
And do you know what example he gives in that book for mindfulness? He gives an example of Sri Krishna and Arjun in Bhagavad Gita.
Oh yes,
he talks about how Krishna sort of like Arjun had a very chanchal mind, right? So
even till the very end.
Till the very end, he had doubts about everything. He don't know if his actions are right, just full or not. So Sri Krishna is that mental health guide you all need, because he tells him, okay, once you are certain that this is your duty, this is your dharma, the true definition of dharma, which Sri Krishna tells us. Once you are sure of it, you don't have to think twice, because that will just create more and more fights within you before you can fight the real fight. The real fight is outside. That's when people realize that if you keep fighting on in your head, if you keep fighting your own thoughts, it's not going to help. So mindfulness is the best technique, the best tactic to sort of channelize that Sri Krishna, to channelize the. And what does Sri Krishna do? He's a driver, he's a Sarthi. He channelizes Arjuna's thoughts throughout, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
So true. It's like Bhagavad Gita is a very nice metaphor for life, everything in life.
Yes. There are thousands of interpretations of it. Each has their own like background with which they start, but each is beautiful, I think.
Yeah.
Recently, I went to a Paramhans Society, Swami Vedanta Society
Vedanta
related
Society.
talk. So there someone had come from Vedanta, like who studies Vedanta, and they also talked about Bhagavad Gita. They have their own take on it. Bhagavad Gita is a different kind of.
Definitely.
Also, you touched upon Sri Krishna and Arjuna's conversation. So that is actually a very good source of learning how to take decisions internally, and then how to execute things. Like it's very philosophical. I feel it's a lot about being detached from. So there's that shlok. Okay, I can't say it verse by verse, but there's a shlok on being detached from outcomes from the fruit of your action. As well,
Karmanyevadikaste kadachana.
Yeah. And also there's this line about being detached from your results, and then about not really being allowing your internal struggles or conflicts to create inaction. So inaction is also a sin. You need to act, and you need to act while being detached. So there's a balance that they try to create. Also, there are lots of other things also are in Bhagavad Gita. There is this one shlok. It's a very rich text, I'll say. But even these small things, if you can understand it really well, they are quite enough to handle stuff.
Definitely. Yeah. I think we have a very rich history to look behind. We also have a rich heritage of literature, and the more we get into that, the more better we become in all aspects.
Definitely. I think it was really a good discussion we had on mental wellness. Quite unplanned, but gave me also some insights, new insights on things.
It helped me also understand everything happening around me, and especially from you, I got to know like how different preferences probably play a role in their life, their future, as well as their decision making.
I think for me personally, I have been thinking about it since a bit earlier than others, I guess, because I used to face some social issues, wellness a bit. So for various reasons. So I guess I got initiated much quicker into self-help related things. But it's good. At some point of time, everyone different phases of life, directly or indirectly, they do need these kinds of things. Okay, so we should continue more. We had planned to talk on podcasting practices, some good podcasts, go on links on it. Then also there was a interesting topic on social work, philanthropy, effective altruism. So these things, and talking about contributing back. So I wanted to discuss about. We do talk about these things like social work and these things. These are ways to contribute to the society, but how do they really, if you look in terms of utility, how much they compare with other things like earning? So that's the premise of effective altruism, I know it, but it's still a good topic of discussion. So right now let's close it. What do you think?
Sure.
With this?
Yeah.
We have some things to talk about, but maybe with the other guests we can bring these things up as and when it feels right.
Yeah.
But it was really great talking today. Like it was unexpected that we'll talk so much about things. So many old memories, like old things will come out, and we'll again go over things. So it was really insightful also, I'll say. Probably this will be a quite insightful session even for the audience.
Sure.
For me it was definitely. So thank you for being here today.
I'm truly grateful. Like getting invited again, and then because before the podcast I told him that I'm very sort of unsure of what to speak, because I don't have like a very well channelized thoughts. I didn't have like a very a fixed structure of what I was going to speak, and I think Abhinav has been an excellent anchor, an excellent host.
Yeah,
And-
actually that plagues me also, those doubts
Yeah.
about being like vocalizing things well, channelizing your thoughts well into your words. But then I see Elon Musk, he doesn't care, and maybe he does not do things smoothly, but everyone listens when he's there to speak. So there are always such people who you can look up to.
Definitely. But like, I am nowhere. He's not comparing me and Elon Musk. He's just saying that.
Yeah.
Don't get the wrong
There are-
idea, guys. Don't
No,
get the wrong
no.
idea.
I don't think they'll get the wrong idea.
Exactly.
He's an inspiration in a way. That's all.
Definitely. Elon Musk is an inspiration. Even all of those people, like a huge list. Anyways, we'll see them next week, I guess, next Sunday.
Yeah.
With
Next
a new
time,
guest.
with a new guest. Let's see. I'll also have some co-host. Maybe Vedang will be here with me for the next one also. With that, let's close. Okay. Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. Thank you. See you soon.